And welcome to the District E Virtual Town Hall. This is specifically for the students, staff, and family members in the district represented by District E, which is from northeast Reno to northwest Reno. In other words, from Hug High School through McQueen High School and out to Golden Valley and up through some of Sun Valley. So I'm happy that you could join me on tonight. My name is Dr. Angie Taylor. I am proud to serve as the Vice President of the Washoe County School District Board of Trustees, and I'm also the representative for the 17 grade schools in the district I mentioned again, District E. So since I'm the representative for the 17 best schools in the Washoe County School District, let me give a shout out to the family, staff, and the students from Billinghurst Middle School, Cannon Elementary School, Clayton Middle School, Duncan Elementary School, Elmcrest Elementary School, Hug High School, Limousin Elementary School, Melton Elementary School, McQueen High School, Peavine Elementary School, Toles Elementary School, Trainer Middle School, TMCC High School, Verdi Elementary School, Warner Elementary School, Westergaard Elementary School, and Winnemucca Elementary School, the 17 amazing schools in District E. Tonight, and the purpose of our town hall on tonight, is I would like to hear your questions, comments, any concerns or anything that you may have regarding the Board of Trustees decisions surrounding the superintendent search. So I'll begin, provide a little background, a brief overview of where we are with the search, and then you'll be able to ask questions. We have had several questions submitted already, but if you do have questions and you haven't submitted them, you can do them until we finish our town hall. And that can be done by submitting your questions via email to questions@washoeschools.net. Again, we welcome your questions at washoeschools.net. So as we get going, I'd like to introduce the incredible staff at the Washoe County School District is going to take our journey on our virtual town hall on tonight with us. First, I'm going to introduce Colleen DeLong, and she has done all the hard work. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all your work. Colleen, she's done all the hard work behind getting this together, setting this up, making sure you knew what was going on, the Connect Ed message that went out both on Friday and the email on today. So this would not literally be happening without you.
Glad to be here, and we're excited to have the event tonight.
I know, I'm excited too. And then also behind the scenes, you won't see nor hear them, but we couldn't be here without them. You have Charles in the back there, and he's making sure that we don't miss any additional questions that are shared with us. And we have John, who's really behind the scenes, who's making sure that we stay live and that everything goes on according to plan, because you live by technology. And hopefully we just live by technology on tonight. So, again, a big shout out also to the staff who's teaming with me on tonight. We are certainly, as you can tell, honoring the guidelines with social or physical distancing, we should say. And we all had our masks on earlier as we joined in. So, again, we want to encourage you to continue to be safe, and we are doing the same. So now, one of the things that will happen in a few minutes, Colleen's going to take over and just give you a little bit more background about submitting questions and how that should be done and so on. But before we do that, let me give you a little bit of an overview and share some details about the Board of Trustees decisions that we've made surrounding the superintendent search. First of all, during the board meeting, you may have heard this, on March 31st, the Board of Trustees, we voted to cancel the search. Many things unprecedented, things that none of us could ever have possibly imagined occurred during that time, as we all know, and really made it next to impossible to continue the search as we had it. For the safety of the candidates that we had 6 finalists at that time, and also for the sake of those who will be involved in the search and should be students, families, staff members, and so on. So we voted to cancel the search at that time. And then on April 28th, which is on tomorrow, we're going to consider the appointment, the next step of in the search, which could potentially be the appointment of Dr. Kristen McNeil, who is now serving as the interim superintendent. We will consider the appointment of Dr. McNeil as the permanent superintendent, and that's on a regularly scheduled meeting, which will be held on tomorrow, 4 p.m., and you can tune in live on YouTube as well. So up until the meeting on the 28th, we have gone through a process and gathered as much, continued, I should say, to gather as much input as we can, because this is the single most important decision that we make as a Board of Trustees. We don't take it lightly. We don't go into it without extreme, and I do mean extreme, consideration and thought processes, because at the end of the day, we just want to do what's best for the families, the students, the staff in this district, and those in our community. As many of you know, since July 1st, Dr. McNeil has served as the interim superintendent. She was appointed to that position July 1st on 2019. And again, above all, we just want to make the best decision that we can. As I said earlier, this is a continuation of input opportunities that we've had well along the way. We've had and received input from members of the public, from students, from families, from staff, from community members, from former staff members, from former community members. So we're really, really proud of the outreach that's been done and really of the involvement of those in the Washoe County community. We know this is an important decision for all of us. It impacts all of us, whether you have students here at the district, whether you live in the community, whether you're a business owner, whether you're a family member. It impacts all of us. So we're really excited about just the amount of involvement. My hair is driving me crazy. The amount of involvement that we've had in this search. So then again, we want to make sure that you still have this opportunity tonight, and then you can also continue to send in any public comment you may have to the Board of Trustees after this until we have our meeting on tomorrow. The board really appreciates all of the work that has been done from the staff in this search, from JG Consulting, the consulting firm that we hired to lead this search for us. They worked very, very hard, and the big reason why we've had so much input is because they did such an incredible job of reaching out to all the constituency groups that we have. So again, this is not the beginning of the process. This is as we get more closer to the end of the input process, because that's very, very important. So now I'm going to turn it over to Colleen, who's going to give us a little bit more information on how you can submit questions and be involved in the virtual forum. Colleen?
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. So we appreciate that overview and giving us an up-to-date status there. Before we get started, I'm going to provide a few details to our audience about tonight's format. We've already received some questions, as you mentioned, and they are from our community, staff, and even a student in there. We also are anxious for people to submit real-time questions, so please make sure you get those in to us. Based on the number of questions we receive, you will be here up until 7 p.m. If we don't have many questions, we may conclude before that time. But at this stage, we're planning to be here until 7 o'clock with questions coming in from the audience. Also, please, for the audience, I'd like you to be aware that we are focused solely on the questions and comments that regard the Board of Trustees' decision surrounding the superintendent search. So we're not going to plan to really answer questions that aren't on that topic. And it will be on the screen, but I will say it out loud too. Please submit your questions to questions@washoeschools.net. So if you're ready, we have your first question.
All right.
Okay.
This is exciting. I'm so glad people got involved and sent questions in.
Absolutely. Okay. And nothing is candy coated here, okay?
Okay. No, we left it open, and so really, I think it's important to hear what's on people's minds.
Okay. Question 1. Why would you appoint the interim when you did it last time with horrible results? Don't cut the community short by taking the easy way out.
Wow. Okay. Let's get right to it then. But no, I appreciate that question that was sent in. And let me say a couple of things. One, to be very honest with you, this is absolutely not the easy way out. It's really difficult, quite honestly, to make a decision towards the end of a search to say, you know what, we should stop this. But, these are unprecedented times, really has called for some unprecedented decisions. And some may have been some things that we've done in the past. In the past, we've hired people that have been internal, and in the past, we've hired people that have been, external, and we've had different results from each. And the same thing in this case. In the past, interims have been hired with success, and then, as you know, because we ended in such a way that was probably traumatic for everybody involved, then that one certainly didn't end in a way that was successful. So I don't think that most immediate history is a prediction of what's going to happen forward, because we can keep going back and find mixed results across the board. But I will want to say this. One, we are not going to make a decision, right? And the decision to appoint the interim has not occurred. I mean, that we consider tomorrow night. And so that's why I'm looking forward to the questions and input, and that input from that we get on tonight. That's a very good question. But should that decision happen, it's not going to be a decision that we think will cut the community short, or the 64,000 students or the 8,000 staff members. That they're counting on us to get it right, and it will be a decision to get it right, one way or another.
Great. Okay, we have another question from the community. How far were you into the search for a superintendent when the COVID-19 situation arose? And how was Dr. McNeil ranked in comparison to the other candidates?
Okay, really good question. We had our directive, if you will, as a board to JG Consulting was to go out, look and see, bring us the best candidates that you can. That would be a good fit for us here in the Washoe County School District as you get to know us as a community. That's one reason why I think it was really important for the outreach that they did, because then you get a chance to meet with community groups and staff groups and student groups and get a feel for who we are, so they can do a better job of recommending, right, who might be a good fit for us. After JG Consulting, and they also had a completely external to us, a group of advisors, if you will, all from the community, because we asked, we wanted some staff. Some staff would have been good, had good input, but he thought he did a really good job, comprehensive job of understanding kind of where the staff stood, and between where the staff stood and where his advisory committee, again, advisory to him, his advisory committee stood. They sent 9 candidates to us. We asked, hey, give us 10. Right, we actually asked for them not even be ranked, quite frankly, but they sent 9 to us, and they were ranked. And of those 9, our marching orders for ourselves, what we said is, of the ones we get from him, the semifinalists, we would take a look and see. We didn't have a number in mind. There's always a natural break somewhere, right? Wherever that natural break is, those are the ones that will come in, and that will come in as finalists. And those are the ones that we selected. I think there were 5. Were there 5?
There were 5.
There were 5.
Yes.
So of that 9, we chose 5 to come in, and then it was really we were in the process then of arranging interviews and getting schedules together. We as a board had already identified, here are the dates that we're going to have in-person interviews. Here are the dates that we're going to have the candidates meet with the community and their own town halls. Here are the dates that we're going to bring our final list, 1 or 2, back for a second interview. All those dates were already marked, already released, and we're working on setting up all of those details. The search firm was with our Chief Human Resources officers. I was going to say HR team, but I wanted to make sure people knew what that was. With Emily, who leads our HR team here, to get it in place, and then COVID-19 happened, and we all got shut down. So that's when it was paused. So we were very close. Dr. McNeil was in that list of finalists, a list of 5 finalists.
Great. Thank you for that comprehensive answer. Okay, we have another one kind of on a similar vein that came into us, and it says, I was wondering, would the superintendent search have had continued had it not been for COVID-19? Also, here's another good question, how much money is being saved by the district by calling off the search?
Okay, both very good questions. First of all, would we continue in the search? We had made the decision that we were going to bring in those 5 candidates, those 5 finalists. We had voted in a public meeting to do that. And so unless you have something as unprecedented as this, I can't imagine what would have, quote unquote, derailed that, if you will, because again, we had already made those decisions, and plans were being made and so on. So I believe the search would have continued, unless it couldn't continue as it was, because again, safety is always going to be first. Nothing's more important than the safety of our staff and of our students. And then the second question?
Yeah, it says, how much money is being saved by the district by calling off the search? And I don't know if you have those figures, but...
No, but I can give it roughly. The total search contract was about $30,000. It was not to exceed $30,000.
Correct.
And to get an idea of what we would save the expenses from bringing in the candidates, travel, lodging, bringing in all five, or four because one was local, bringing in all four, last minute tickets, cost a little bit of money. Right. And then when you bring them back a second time, oftentimes they may want to bring a spouse or a significant other, and that's taken care of as well. So there were, let's just say, a few thousand. From there, because I think someone asked the president of JG Consulting, and maybe as much as 10,000, perhaps. But it's hard to know because those arrangements weren't made. But the thing I think it's really important is we approved before hiring a search firm that we would spend up to $100,000 for a search firm if necessary. But we came in, and some of the bids that we had were much higher. And this is a firm that has done searches even in our own state. Superintendent searches across the country very successfully, and the numbers came in quite a bit lower at $30,000. So we were pleased with that because I think that probably maybe that made the decision a little bit easier because it wasn't we spent $100,000 and then now we aren't going to do it. That perhaps it made it a little bit easier, but again, it's at the end of the day unprecedented. Just unprecedented times, and the difficult decisions have to be made when that happens.
Absolutely. The next comment that we have here is actually a comment. It's not a question, but you may want to reflect on it. Okay. So I'll read it verbatim here. It says, I really hope that we have a superintendent who will embrace the diversity in our community. Equity in education is an important issue, and all students deserve the same access to education, regardless of where they live, their income, their race, or their gender. I hope that our next superintendent will understand this and will work to ensure that we are providing an inclusive environment for students, families, and staff.
Really, really good question. And I think it's a really fair question because oftentimes when you have a superintendent that's from a marginalized group, right, as we did with former Superintendent Davis, you feel a sense of loss when you have someone that really isn't from a marginalized group. Because I'm from a group like that, and also because I have been committed to equity, diversity, and inclusion, right, all of my life, I could not in good conscience hire a superintendent that I did not think shared a commitment to that. So let me just say that up front. So I'm going to agree with that statement. We absolutely have to have a superintendent that shows a commitment. It is a challenge in a community like ours because we are a majority minority district, meaning most of the majority of our district are people of color. If you just look at that area of diversity, although there are more, right, are people of color. And so we absolutely have to have a leader that can understand that in and of itself creates unique challenges for those families, for those students, for those members of the community. Our community, however, is not majority minority. So the challenge is, how do you put together a staff, a classroom staff, a staff in this administration building, people in the support functions and so on, whether they're bus drivers or psychologists, school psychologists and so on, that reflect the diversity of the student body that we have. That doesn't just include ethnicity. Right? We also have different levels of ability, different types of ability, I should say, different gender identifications. We have such a district with 47% of our students are available for free and reduced lunch. That's a pretty poor district in terms of our student population. So that's an area, socioeconomic, that's an area of diversity as well. Language. I mean, so there are a lot of ways that we want to represent. We want our district, our personnel, our staff, our teachers, our leaders to represent that diversity. And that's a challenge and and that gives us a lot of work to do. I will say this. If anyone had the opportunity to watch the virtual forum that Dr. McNeil had, and she pointed out those things that were priorities to her, equity and inclusion. Were specifically mentioned, and that in and of itself gives me, right, the idea that that's something that's on her radar. Because if I have to ask you to put it on your radar, then it isn't something that you're thinking about. That tells me that that's something that's front of mind for her. It's been front of mind for our district for at least since I've been on the board. I know my board colleagues feel that way. We may go about it a little differently, but I know my board colleagues feel that way. And the fact is she listed as one of the areas that she's focused on. And Ann was honest about the fact that there's still some work to do there. Then I feel comfortable. I feel like we can do something there and continue the work.
Wonderful. Thank you. Once again, I'm going to remind folks, please send in questions to questions@washoeschools.net. We are ready to take more questions in the queue so we can continue to hear from you. I do have another comment here, and this one is from a staff member. It says, I have heard it said that the definition of an expert is someone from out of town carrying a briefcase. Let's look at the great people we have here in the district first. I sincerely hope that the school board will consider appointing our interim superintendent, Kristen McNeil, rather than spending a ton of money and waste countless hours of effort in a national search. In my opinion, she has done a great job in handling our current COVID-19 situation, as well as being inclusive, wise, measured, articulate, and capable. We should at least continue making Kristen our superintendent. She certainly has proven her worth, commitment, and ability. Any person we bring in from the outside will cause a transition, perhaps a rough one, and may or may not be any better than Kristen. So would you maybe address the internal versus external, which you briefly talked about earlier?
I think that's one of the things that we have probably gotten since we began. And then right after we had a change in the superintendent position back in 2019 in July, right? Ever since then, I should say, early July, until now, people have weighed in on whether we should get someone that's internal or that's external, right? Or that's local or that's out of the area. And I will tell you, Colleen, people feel very, very passionately about this on both sides. It's incredible that, there are people that think it is the end of the district as we know it if we bring someone else in. And there are people that believe it is the end of the district as we know it if we don't bring in someone from the outside. So really, and I can understand there are absolutely merits to both sides. Again, if you look at our history, both have been successful. Both have had some challenges, right? So there isn't one or the other that you can say unequivocally, this is the way. So that's complicated. Instead, going into this, speaking for myself, right, as one vote, one colleague, one trustee, I should say, my job, my goal going into this was let's get the absolute best person that we can and put those limitations off, whether it's male, female, whatever gender, whatever ethnicity, whatever. This district deserves the best person we can get to lead us from where we are to where it is that we know that we can go, without considering those, because they're really strong opinions and very passionate views on both sides. How do you solve both? You keep the feedback on both ends of it in mind, and then make the best decision that you can.
Absolutely. So our next question is obviously a very important topic, because we've heard it a little bit in the same vein earlier, but this person has the same kind of type of question, so I'm going to ask it again. Why is it that the school board spent $30,000 on a search firm to find a qualified superintendent and then chose to ignore the top 6 finalists selected, choosing instead to go with Kristen McNeil, who was the assistant to and strong supporter of the now terminated former superintendent?
Well, and I love the question, because I think it's certainly on people's mind, and I'm glad that people are being upfront with it.
Right.
One thing I will say is one, we haven't made a decision yet. That vote comes tomorrow. Okay. The second thing that I would say is we didn't ignore the search firm at all. We asked them to give us 10 finalists, wherever the natural break is, and it came back with 9. Dr. McNeil, who's the interim superintendent, was in that 9. So it really is within the realm for us to consider her, really is within the realm of the recommendations of the search firm. Right? I think that's a part of it as well. So I don't think at all it was a waste of $30,000, because had we not had that, we couldn't say, you know what, she's one of the best ones out there for us. Since she's the one that we're considering, again, based upon the rule, we can't bring other people in. We would if we could. Let me speak for myself. I would if I could, because I think it's really important to get the best person that we can. And those are just things that help to reaffirm and, where you are and so on. But it is not going against that recommendation at all. She was in, we got the recommendation of 9, not 6, of 9. And we didn't ask for them to be ranked. They were as they came to us, but we didn't because that's great. But then since we're the ones that represent the district and that have the ear, because that's our job of getting the ear and the feedback and the comments and the concerns and the fear of the community that we represent, as well as the staff, the students, the family, the district in my case, right? There are other things that we have that we can throw into the pot as well. And I will tell you this, there's certainly still quite a bit of support for Dr. McNeil. And I think something else that's been real important for me in terms of my consideration is, one, we cannot safely continue the search. Mm-hmm. That's a no-brainer. We cannot safely continue the search.
Right. Current conditions.
Yes, because of current conditions. I mean, it's crazy, but we couldn't. So that in and of itself made that easy, right? Because we couldn't do it safely. I would like to say, well, maybe let's just see, but we don't know how long we're going to be, And originally that really is where it was. If you look at the meeting, you'll see, well, maybe let's just put it on pause. Let's just see, because that was before the governor came out and said, hey, we're going to extend this. We're going to extend this longer. And right now, we don't know when this thing is going to end. Well, we can't keep people on hold, candidates, internal, external, wherever, people all over the country. We can't keep staff members, on hold, families on hold, and what are we going to do? At least this way, one way or another. Okay, at least the holding pattern in terms of where we are now will be done. So again, I just want to say, one, the decision will be made tomorrow. 2, we are not outside the recommendations of the search firm at all. In fact, the search firm was really clear when he gave us the 9 that this was the recommendation that came from the advisory committee, that them as a search firm, they consider all 9 of them strong, viable candidates for us. And out of that 9, we landed on 5, and Dr. McNeil was one of the 5.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Mm-hmm. So my next one is a comment, and it's rather long, so there may be a few of the issues that you want to address. I don't know, you might even need to take notes or have me repeat some of this. So this is, like I said, a pretty long comment. But
okay, I'll
the
take
person
notes.
Basically says, what I want in a superintendent: someone who is local and understands Northern Nevada and has a positive relationship with the community. Someone who has experience with a very large school district, because this position has control of 9,000 employees and 64,000 students. The larger the district, the more conflicts that arise with school boards, community, employees, so experience is important. Large districts struggle with poor internal and upward communication. Again, experience would be helpful. Someone who does not practice short-term and self-interest thinking. Someone with extensive knowledge of financial issues in a very large organization with a multi-million-dollar budget. Someone who understands the values of engaging volunteers as a free labor resource. A real leader who is ethical and does the right when needed, makes the hard decisions for students, staff, WCSD, and community. So there's a lot of different issues in there, Dr. Taylor. Mm-hmm. So, and I do see you frantically taking notes. But if you need me to repeat any of that, let me know. I'd be happy to.
No, thank you, Colleen. I caught it. I would say a lot of those things are really important to a lot of people. I mean, obviously, if you can find a really good, strong candidate that's positive for you and that can do the job, because as stated, it is a big job. This is the largest enterprise in our community. Yeah. 64,000 students. If you count head count employees, it is 9,000. If you just go full time, it's 8,000. But so this person knows that if you count head count, it is 9,000. We're in one of the top like 35, 40 districts in the country. So it is a very large enterprise, and someone without that experience could be a little overwhelmed going in. So I'm just going to concur with that. If you can get someone like that has demonstrated a commitment to this community, or a willingness to make a commitment to this community, we could say, certainly. I mean, that's a bonus, because we're unique here in Northern Nevada, and we pride ourselves on being unique. That's part of what makes us us. Right?
Absolutely.
And we want someone that can embrace that and love that, and that wants to be one of us. We really do. So either we get someone who is one of us, or someone who wants to be one of us, because we're used to people transferring in, and we'll give you a transfer, but we want you to become one of us and be committed to the Northern Nevada way. Because it's our way. So a lot of these things are, I think, really important, and you can add more. I mean, you certainly have to be able to make hard decisions. There are a lot of hard decisions going on almost daily now, because of where we are. You can talk about ethics and respect and integrity, and absolutely, those are must-haves. And I'm glad this person talked about a leader because we aren't looking for a manager. We're looking for a leader. A leader is someone that can look that knows the way, right? Goes the way, and shows the way.
Exactly.
Right. John Maxwell, by the way, Dr. John Maxwell borrowed that from him. But that's a leader. That's not the one who does the way day to day, because we have a large enterprise. We need someone that's looking forward.
And I believe a lot of these were discussed when the job description for the application was being worked on. The board had a great deal of input.
And we spent an extensive amount of time in the work session coming up with the job description and what are those things that we wanted and that we thought the community wanted, again, based upon input, because there was a community survey that we did. Again, this has had so much input into it, and I love that. I love that, looking at these are the things that we got from the community in terms of things that they're looking for, and even adjustments that were made because we got a lot of feedback from this, and even other adjustments that were made, frankly, as we got input from our staff. I mean, this is can you imagine being a staff member or a student or even a family in the situation that we're in right now when there's so many unknowns? So this is a really key decision for us to make, because we need people to feel like whatever decision we make tomorrow, that we're on some solid footing in terms of what's going to happen next. I think that's really important. So I would concur with all of these. And as you said, most of them, if not all, have been shared.
Exactly. In that job description and the application process. So, yeah. Okay, so we have another question, and we are still encouraging folks to send in their questions.
Okay.
Why is the board looking elsewhere for a superintendent? A person who lives here, currently works in Washoe County school system, and knows our unique needs and problems seems like the right choice. Consult and/or study school systems that made it through rapid, massive growth. Thank you.
Very good feedback, and I alluded to it earlier. I can, as I said, I speak as one trustee, but I know that in our work session we spoke a lot about when we had to decide whether we want to just do a local search or whether we wanted it to be a national search. And it was unanimous that let's look nationally, even though we may end up locally, and that's okay. But we want to know that we looked for and found the absolute best person for our district based upon where we are and where we want to go. To me, there was a question earlier that said we're cheating people if we don't. I think we would be cheating people if we didn't say, hey, let's cast this broad net out there, and let's see if there's some fish out there that might be amazing for us and a great fit and can really help to move us forward. And I think the community, the students and the staff, I think they deserve that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, I have another comment, and this says, as a parent, I would like to say that I think Dr. McNeil is doing a great job. I appreciate her transparency and what appears to be honesty. My son attended Washoe County School District from 2005 to 2018, and she is by far the best superintendent that I have seen. I would very much prefer to have her as our superintendent over any of the other candidates that the board had previously proposed with the job search. I vote for Dr. McNeil. And then a final comment, please continue to manage the budget so our taxes don't get increased again. So I don't know if there's anything in there you'd like to comment on.
Sure, I'll comment on both of those topics. One of the things you get when you're an internal candidate is that you've been here for a while, and so you have a chance to develop relationships, and that can be good and bad, by the way, right? You have a chance to develop relationships and people to get a chance to see how you work. You also get a chance to learn, here's some things that are good, and here's some things that may not be so good. Right? And so Dr. McNeil, again, that works in her favor or not in it, but it's great to have someone that has been around the district for a long time and that says, you know what, I've seen her work. She's done some things, and I think that's fantastic. In terms of the tax dollars got increased not because of the lack of management money, of funds, of taxpayer dollars, but the generous citizens of this community voted to increase our sales taxes so that we could build schools and eliminate overcrowding.
Right.
And
that was in the 2017 election.
That was in 2017. It's just a few years ago, but it seems like a long time ago, right? But our taxpayers voted to do that. But that is not general revenue. That's not general fund money. It can only be spent to build schools and school facilities. Such as, if you need to build a nutrition services because it's larger, because it needs to be larger because we have more kids, things like that. And that the spending of every nickel of that money goes through a community committee that they make ultimately the decisions are ours, but they make the recommendations to the board. This is what should be spent on this. This is what should be spent on that. And we set that up as a board intentionally because we wanted to have another layer of accountability, another layer of transparency, because that's an open meeting as well, where people can go and weigh in and ask questions and they can see minutes and all of those things. So please know that WC1 had nothing to do with management of existing funds or anything like that. And also know that I'm very proud to report that last year, for the first time in 14 years, we balanced the budget. Yes. We balance the budget, and one of the challenges that we have, many know this, is that we lag the nation quite substantially in how we fund education, and we are so grateful for Governor Sisolak and the 3% increase that he said, hey, I'm committing this to teachers, and then we have to find a way to for it to work in our budgets, and we did, because as a board we were committed to that. But after 14 years, we balanced the budget. It's a tough thing to do when you don't have enough, when you're about $5,000 below the national average for how much you spend per student.
Right, the per pupil funding.
Per pupil funding. But there's also a new formula being looked at now that hopefully will balance that out a little bit more, and we can, I think, do a couple of things that are really, really important to my colleagues and I. Increase teacher pay and decrease class sizes. Those are both directly related to the funding. So we're working very closely and watching very closely so that hopefully we can get there after we recover from lost tax revenue because of COVID-19 now. That's going to be a challenge for all of us.
It is, nationally.
Yep.
Okay, we have a question, thank you, that came in just recently. It says, why was the selection period cut short? The last two superintendents left in disgrace because the board did a terrible job in selection. Would it not be prudent to pause the process rather than make a knee-jerk reaction? For the unprecedented times, hit the pause button and resume the search again when people can travel for interviews, etc. They also ask, was the consulting firm involved in the selection process with the last two superintendents? And they also go on to say, the current acting superintendent is doing a mediocre job. My 4 children attend WCSD, and as a parent, the distance learning situation is not terrible, but surely not great, worthy of a snap decision to make a highly paid job for the area's largest employer.
Well, there are a lot in that, so I'll try to work through it, and we'll see if I miss
Yes.
anything.
Yes,
because
I'll keep an eye here.
Yeah, no,
I'll hold your feet to the fire. Okay.
No, please do,
Yes.
because this is what this is for people to ask questions. First of all, in terms of why the search was cut short, as I mentioned earlier, we're in these unprecedented times, and certainly there could be a pause. The challenge with that is we don't know how long that pause would be. And as we know, states are coming back online, so to speak, state by state, and even in some cases, county by county. And so we really don't know when it would be safe to travel again. And so for those other 4 candidates, all of which were also candidates in other searches, right? I mean, they're on hold there as well, from what I understand. Most, if not all, of the searches across the country, depending upon where they were in the process. Right.
Different phases for different districts.
Different things that they've done based upon where they were in the process. For an example, at the university, they weren't as far in the process at all. So pausing that is a little different. Versus we were setting up travel. But as I said, each of them were also candidates in other positions as well. So that's a tough thing to do, is to ask them to wait as well. And so, that's the primary reason, as I said, Dr. McNeil was a finalist. So don't think for a moment this search process began last year. So it is not a knee jerk at all. I mean, this has been an ongoing process for a very long period of time, for months and months. And we have gotten an extreme amount of input on this, which I think is necessary. That's why even now, and we're scheduled to make a decision tomorrow, we're still getting input. I know my colleagues are watching, right? We're still getting input because it's important. Right? Hi, colleagues. But it's still important to hear. So these questions don't concern me at all from a bad standpoint. I want you to know. So that's why. So certainly it hasn't been knee-jerk. We spent quite a bit of time, even at the board meeting, having this as a conversation. Should we pause, or should we just end it and say, let's look and see if we stop where we are, we're going to be okay. Do we like this? Is this a good decision? Because frankly, if we didn't complete the search, this is just my opinion, based upon the timing, what we know about bringing things back online, and when people are going to be safe to travel again, you're really looking at another year. Because it's cyclical, right? When there's movement in academia, whether it's K-12 or whether it's higher education, it's cyclical. And this is the time when the interviews are happening and so on. You wouldn't really be able to pick it back up in September, let's say, or August, let's say, right? When more counties, and based upon where where the candidates were and so on. And then is it going to be safe to get people back together, right? We don't know what the social distancing is going to look like at that time or so on. So it will really mean that we're going to wait another year. And some of the feedback, let me speak for myself, is that we've received from staff one way or the other is, let's know what's going to be happening this next year as soon as we can, because this is such a difficult time of unknowns. I mean, early on, we know a little bit more now. We can kind of settle in. But man, when this thing first started, day by day, we didn't know what was going on.
Hour by hour,
really, I mean, seriously. I mean, it was like that for everyone. It really was. And so I can understand that need for stability, for instability. I mean, the need for stability in such an unknown, unstable, unprecedented environment. So I certainly respect those comments. I absolutely do. And I think they're things that we have to ask ourselves. There's certainly things that I asked myself before making the vote that we did a month ago. Okay, instead of pausing it, because my first thing was, let's pause it. Right. So I had to have that conversation with myself, quite frankly, because I have to feel good, right, about the decision that I make, and then to go into, and that's where we landed. And man, as we go further and further, it makes more and more sense to do that, because it's really saying we're going to wait another year. At the end of the day, that's what it would be. And then in terms of distance learning, I have to tell you, to take one of the largest school districts in the nation in a 1 week period of time, put together a distance learning program for 64,000 students, 47% of which are low income. 16,000 of which that don't have devices where they can do it. Some almost 13% of which are special ed students that need extra accommodations and so on IEPs. How do we deal with those students? The percentage of students that we have that are ELL, and how do we make sure we're reaching them? The percentage of students that we have that are gifted and talented, that are GATE and that need to be challenged even more. The whole to put together a curriculum like that, and as coordinated by the State Department of Education, and a consistent theme that you'll see out there is it has to be no harm to the student, because it isn't the student's fault.
Correct.
If I don't have a laptop at home as a student, and so I have to get a packet, regardless of what my home situation may be, right? Because it varies all the way across our district, just like in any other district, right? I can't punish that child if it's more difficult for them because of their home situation, or their financial situation, or their learning ability situation, or versus someone else who may, have a more consistent, more stable environment that we would like all of our kids to have. So a really consistent theme across our district and many others across the country is no harm for the student. To do that in a week is that's pretty impressive. And so it may not be all of what everybody would want it to be, and I certainly acknowledge that. But given some time, then we can do some things differently. That's for sure. But man, when you land in a situation just like that and have to put it together just like that and meet all these different needs like that, I'm actually really proud of the work that was done in the district.
Thank you. I do think there's one question that you missed in there too, referring to a superintendent search firm being used for the previous two superintendents. And I know with your tenure on the Board of Trustees, you probably are quite well equipped to answer that.
Well, I'm more equipped than anyone else because I've been on the board about 5.5 years. I'm the veteran, 5.5 years, not very long, but that's okay. Actually, no, the previous search when former Superintendent Davis was hired, that was an internal hire. There was no search firm. And the search before then, when former Superintendent Martinez was hired, I wasn't here. So I don't know.
Okay.
I don't think JG Consulting was used previously in any other search, quite honestly. I doubt very seriously, but I don't know for sure because I really wasn't here. Again, we don't have a lot of tenure on the board, but I doubt it. They were not. Okay, I'm being told by staff who was here at that time that JG Consulting was not used in any of the previous searches.
Okay, great. Okay, we have a comment that just came in too for you. It says, as a Washoe County School District teacher and parent, I want to ask that you vote in favor of Kristen McNeil as the permanent superintendent. I have been very pleased with her communication with the WCSD staff and support of teachers. I think the district's morale has already improved under her leadership. Many of my colleagues feel the same way. We also like that she has worked her way up in the very district she will lead. She is a community member whose children have attended our schools. Let's make the right decision.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I will say, and thank you for watching in the district. Yes, fantastic. That's what this is for, because my job is to represent you. I will say that you, who are coming in, I will say, Colleen, that honestly, the vast majority of the comments that I've received have been in support of Dr. McNeil, and I am absolutely open. I went into this search, let's get the best possible person, and if it's Dr. McNeil, fantastic, because now she's earned it, she beat everybody else and so on. I've had no other agenda other than that from the very beginning. And so to have heard, we've received a lot of feedback, which is fantastic, right? On what we should look for, what our the most successful candidate should have, and then of late in terms of how we should handle this situation that we're in now. And the vast majority has certainly been in support of making Dr. Kristen McNeil the permanent superintendent. I thought it was important tonight to give my district a specific opportunity to have my ear and ask me questions, because this is a huge decision. And I want to know how they feel about it, where they are, those in the schools, those at home homeschooling their children, for the first time, those who have to deal with the challenges of distance learning. So I certainly understand that comment and question that came in, because it's really, really important.
Great. Okay, here we have another question that says, I'm not sure I understand what happened at the March 31st meeting. How does this process differ from the last superintendent's appointment? Please explain to me.
Very good question. I went through that a little bit when I reviewed, but certainly I think it's important for there to really be some clarity. On March 31st, one of our colleagues, one of our trustees made the recommendation, you know what, we're in these unprecedented times with COVID-19. And it's been so, unstable, so kind of tumultuous. There it is.
It's a tough word.
That's it. That's a tough one. And quite honestly, up until then, unsolicited. Many of us had received a lot of comments about the great leadership that Dr. McNeil had been demonstrating throughout the process. And by then, the process was where we were in terms of COVID-19 was almost a month long. And again, all of those things came up, and we had a very short time to respond to what was happening, because the governor made the decision right before we went on spring break.
Mm-hmm.
Right before we went on spring break. And then we had a little time in spring break to get things together. 2 weeks, I guess. It was not 1 week, 2 weeks.
Right.
But really 1 week, because the next week, the teachers started. They had some training to get ready for it. But at any rate,
and that was back in mid-March.
That was in mid-March, mm-hmm. Exactly. And so really unsolicited, we started getting unsolicited emails and, a couple of letters, and I'd see people when we could be out in the community before we really, really got shut down, or if I'm at the grocery store and before we all started wearing masks and so on. It's just on how impressed they were with her leadership. From other governmental agencies in the community that we've worked with throughout this process. Again, unsolicited comments, remarks via social media, sometimes directly, on just the tremendous job that she's shown under this kind of crisis situation. So you don't learn about this in superintendent school. You just don't. So I'm sure it was all of that stuff that prompted Trustee Caudill. I didn't expect it. I didn't know that was happening. Trustee Caudill said, you know what, we've gotten this under this heat, this fire that no one can ever prepare you for. It's because she is who she is, because she's grown up in the district, because she's served in so many different positions, because if she was going to crash, she was going to crash. She would have crashed then. And because we're in COVID-19 and we can't continue this search anyway, because we can't get anybody in. And before we're very sure that it's safe, we're going to be too late and going to have to wait another year. And so that was where that came from. So that's what happened on March 31st. We had conversations back and forth and back and forth. There were a couple of trustees that thought right away, hey, yeah, let's do it. I was one of the trustees, quite honestly. It's like, not sure, not as an indictment on Dr. McNeil, but again, let's get the best possible person we can. And I know there are another couple of trustees that we had to just kind of talk through it a little bit. And by the time we got to the end of it, it's like, you know what? All right, let's take a look and let's spend this next month and let's see what direct feedback we get on if this is the right decision. One, because of where we are, and because of the job that she's done, up until now. And so that was the difference. Last time, some community feedback came in, but there was never a search process. There was never a finalist made. The board at that time, and I was on that board, I think I was 10 minutes old on the board at that point. It was really new. Decided, hey, Superintendent Davis at that time, interim, was doing such a great job. Let's hire her. I was kind of a holdout on that one too, but eventually, got there. But nonetheless, that's the difference. This one, there's been much more of a process, and there has been much more input. I have to say that, much more. Certainly not 100%, that isn't expected, but much more input throughout the search process, and then when it's time to make this very important decision tomorrow. So that's the difference between the two.
Okay. Great. So we have a last minute question here, which is good because we're down to about our last 5 minutes tonight.
Okay.
So I'm happy to see this come in. And it says, I'm sure this is already a well-known item, but is this a contract position? And what is the time frame of the contract? And this is sent in by a parent of 2 WCSD students.
Fantastic. Thank you for asking the question. Very important one. Tomorrow's decision is simply on, do we make this appointment or not? That's the only thing on the agenda. Because of open meeting law, we can only consider what's on the agenda.
Right.
What's on the agenda is we will consider the appointment of. And then the board will either say, yes, we think this has been great, we've gotten feedback, we think this is what the people in my district want, the people, whatever the case may be, right, feedback I've gotten and so on. And then should that pass, okay, then the next item on the agenda should that pass, then we empower legal counsel to begin negotiating a contract. And that will happen at that time. Now, we did have the board work session, as we talked about before, with the consultant that we had. And as a board, we talked through every part of the contract. So that's really already set. So there's very little room there's some room to maneuver, but very little. I mean, we went through every piece of it, what's in line with what's going on nationally, because this is a huge position. And we, want to make sure that we're competitive in the position, right? But at the same time, we made a decision that I could say we talked about salary range, which would be competitive, right? But we aren't going to rule the world in that. But we also want to have a good superintendent. We talked about every aspect of the benefits and so on that we were looking for in terms of the contract. So those parameters have already been in place, but they will not be voted upon tomorrow.
Well, we are down to our final minutes.
Okay.
And I think it's about time for us to kind of conclude. So we had some great questions. And I would like to thank everybody who joined us and who submitted questions up until the very end. I appreciate that. And I would like to see if you have any parting words for us this evening.
I do. First of all, I'm very excited that we had so much involvement, so many questions sent in advance and some sent in real time. Thank you very much. Thank you for taking the time to watch, to submit questions, to share comments. Again, this is, in my opinion, the single most important thing that we do at the school board. And so there's no such thing as too much input, in my opinion, and especially because I'm honored to represent those 17 schools and the communities that feed those schools. That's really important to me. So thank you for making some time in your schedule to show that it's important to you, for you and your children and others in the community from that district that may be watching. And again, I want to thank Colleen for putting this together and making sure this happened, and Charles over here on the side, and John back somewhere, wherever he is, for making this happen as well. Please, you can continue to send in public comment between now and when we ask, probably about 2:00 tomorrow, I would imagine. The meeting starts at 4. And so if you want to make sure your public comments considered, you want to at least give us a couple of hours for staff to get it together and send it our way. We do read the public comment, every one of them we do, and the president responds on our behalf.
And I will add that you can make a live public comment during the actual meeting by emailing JJ during the meeting at jbatchelder@washoschools.net. So actually live during the meeting. Public comments are accepted.
Fantastic. It's tough to do public comment virtually, but it is there. And if you've missed that email address, it's on washoschools.net. You can find it. And thank you again very much. Thanks for all who tuned in, and for all of you who helped to make this happen. It's a big decision tomorrow, so be watching. I appreciate you. And be safe out there.